I keep a folder of voice memos from friends who swear they'll tell it once, never again. Jenna's file sits at the top. We shared an animation studio internship in Atlanta 3 summers ago. Lost touch. Then, last January, she asked if I still edited podcasts. The story she wanted cleaned up came out in a single 40-minute breath, recorded the night after everything happened. What follows is Jenna's experience trimmed for clarity, but in her own order, because she says linear thinking still makes her dizzy. Jenna grew up near Norton, southwestern Virginia, where the forest climbs so steep it steals 5 p.m. sunlight by 3. Thanksgiving week 2024, she drove home to help her mom prep the family cabin for winter pipes drained. Mice trap set, usual. The place sits above a gulch locals call Blue Hollow, 3 gravel miles off US 23, deep enough the mail truck refuses to go. The only neighbor within shouting distance is an abandoned coal tipple half swallowed by sumac. Blue Hollow carries its own hush talk lore. Railmen a century back blamed disappearances on rage runners, feral families too proud or too inbred to join mining camps. One warning survived: if you hear a single rap on your door after midnight, don't answer the second. Locals treat it like a campfire flourish, but older folks still wedge a chair under the knob before bed. Jenna always rolled her eyes at that. If the whistle version too soft bird calls, off-tempo still gave her goose flesh. Day 1 at the cabin felt normal. Box up canned food, bleach the sink, sweep cold dust ghosts off the porch. Late afternoon, she hiked the old logging grade toward the tipple to check a trail camera her mom leaves for black bear research. Halfway, she noticed fresh footprints, deep vibram lugs, not the slick boot heel of a hunter. The tracks angled off the grade into laurel so thick she couldn't see 5 feet. She shrugged it off. Teenagers trespass all the time looking for places to drink. The tipple rusted corrugated silo, conveyor throat drooping, looked unchanged. The trail cam was gone. Only the mounting strap remained, sliced clean. Jenna snapped photos for her mom's records, then turned home, daylight thinning to pencil lead. That's when the first whistle floated upslope, 2 notes, the second a beat late, too breathy for a bird. She froze, called out a hello. Nothing answered, only wind-threading oak crowns. She jogged the rest of the way, reminding herself feral people's stories sell better than they age. Night shoved mountains against the stars early. Jenna texted me a meme at 7:04 p.m. Last cell service before the hollows swallowed signal. She built a small fire in the stone ring, hoping smoke would deter coyotes. Around 9, she lugged the cooler inside, bolted the door, and scrolled through photos. Zooming the strap picture, she noticed bloody fingerprint smears, fresh enough to glisten. She told herself it could be rust flakes mixed with rain. 11:17 p.m. The cabin thumped once wood swelling. She figured until it thumped again, knuckles on back door this time. 1 knock, not hammering. She held breath, phone camera ready, though there was no bar. A second knock followed, softer but deliberate. The legend's cadence. She stepped to window, flicked porch light. Nothing moved but fog twisting off creek. Minutes chewed themselves. She finally cracked the door, flashlight high. On the step sat her mom's trail camera, lens shattered, SD card slot pried empty. No note. No footprints in the pine needles except the boots she'd seen earlier, same lug width, leading down toward the hollow mouth. She dragged the camera inside, barred the door with an oak chair, and locked every window latch. November's hyphens heat fast. Around 2, Jenna stirred to the metallic ping of the propane tank regulator outside, somebody tapping. She eased curtain. LED, headlamp bobbed near the tank, then killed its beam. In the moonwash, she glimpsed a figure crouched, fiddling with valve. Propane hisses scared her more than ridge runners. She chambered around in the .22 rifle her dad kept for pests, flipped porch light, and shouted she was armed. The croucher bolted into dark, but not before headlamp halo showed clean-shaven jaw, maybe late 20s, wearing tactical gloves. Not feral organized. Sleep never returned. At dawn, she inspected the tank. Valve half loosened, enough to leak fumes if someone struck a match. She photographed wrench marks, texted her mom via WiFi house router runs off dish, then loaded the Subaru, intent on filing a sheriff report in Norton. The drive-out winds switchbacks. On the first bend, a blue Chevy Colorado blocked the road, hooed up like a distress cliche. Same gloves guy waved her down. Another man sat tailgate, boot off, ankle wrapped in gauze, face pale with staged pain. Jenna trusted first aid classes more than roadside theater. She slowed but didn't stop. Glove guy stepped into path. Palm up. She'd gunned engine, swerved around ditch. Mirrors catching the scene. Tailgate man rising fine, no limp. Shotgun, propped beside cooler. Glove guy slapped the rear quarter panel as she roared past. She reached cell coverage near the overlook. Called 911. Dispatch patched to Carter County deputies, already investigating a series of cabin break-ins. Propane stolen, gear stripped, owner scared off by midnight knocks. The suspects, 2 brothers from out of state selling stolen copper and GPS tagged trail cameras on marketplace apps. Their trick, pose stranded, disable propane so cabin seemed unsafe, then haul valuables once owners left for repairs. The whistles and legend references were intimidation theater, local color, one arrestee later bragged. Deputies raced up Whisper Gap, finding the Chevy still angled across road, engine cold. Inside truck bed, her mom's SD card, 3 other trail cams, bolt cutters, and cans of bear spray. Brothers caught an hour later near Interstate 81, trying to swap plates at a rest area. DNA bloody fingerprint tied them to a broken basement window from a July burglary 5 hollows over. Jenna filed her statement. Spent that night at my apartment in Midtown. Shaking off adrenaline while I scrubbed hissy edges from the voice memos she'd just recorded. Toxicology cleared. No propane inhalation. She replaced the cabin's lock set with steel deadbolts and welded brackets over the tank valve. The Forestry Service installed motion cameras with live feed cell boosts along Whisper Gap Road. Locals joked Bigfoot finally got Wi-Fi. The urban legend layer survived, though. Reddit threads spun the arrest into conspiracy. Why did the brothers mimic the Whistler cadence? Were they covering for something deeper in Blue Hollow? Jenna rolls her eyes but still shivers if 2 offbeat whistles drift through her Atlantic Complex courtyard. As she closed her memo, she said, "Tell people the monsters are real enough. They just shave and flip houses on Facebook Marketplace when they're done." She hasn't slept in the cabin since, and she never will without someone trustworthy keeping watch, because now she knows the gap only whispers until someone answers. And the second knock is always loud enough to change your life. I grew up in Charleston, but every autumn I drive the 2-hour snarl of my 64 to visit my uncle. S-trailer near New River Gorge. He's XESX and still keeps a scanner by the recliner so he can track freights grinding over the mountain passes. Because of him, I've heard the local sidetrack legend since grade school. A brakeman called Lantern Jack, who supposedly lost his head to a runaway coal car in 1911. Hikers swear that on foggy nights you can see his kerosene lantern bobbing along the old Meadow Fork spur, looking for the body the company never recovered. It's the kind of yarn park rangers use to clear kids off the rails after sunset. I always rolled my eyes until the night his light stepped straight into my high beams and nearly cost me more than skepticism. Late last October, I promised Uncle Rafe I'd haul a truckload of insulated skirting to shore up his pipes for winter. By the time I signed out of work, strapped the panels to my Tacoma, and snaked up US 19, the gorge was already swallowing dusk. Rafe S. Place perches on a ridge that overlooks the abandoned spur to rusted rails. Diving into rhododendron before vanishing in an unlit tunnel the locals call Lantern Bend, because it curves just enough to hide what is ahead. I dunked the skirting in his shed, drank 1 mug of coffee, and insisted on driving back before my Sunday graveyard shift. Rafe warned that the Ridge Road fog is bad after dark. I laughed, said the Toyota has LED pods bright enough to fry ghosts. The Ridge Lane is single-track asphalt stitched with frost heaves. Drop a tire and you kiss a 100-foot plunge. I crawled it in low gear, music off, windows cracked for sound. Somewhere past the mile marker I saw mist knuckling up from the holler, thick as pipe smoke. No moon, only the Gore-Tex sky and my lights skating off wet leaves. Halfway down I rounded the curve that runs directly over Lantern Bend Tunnel. That's when the first glare hit, a white lantern glow hovering shoulder height, 20 yards ahead, dead center of the lane. I tapped brakes, ABS, chirp-rolled, to a stop. The beam looked old school, not LED, the light stuttering like flame-starved kerosene. My brain said hiker with a vintage flash, but who hikes rail beds in this soup? I toggled high beams. The glow shrank, then slid off into the trees as if someone pivoted. I rolled forward 5 yards. Fog boiled around grill heat. Suddenly glass shattered rear passenger side. Something had smashed the window. Instinct punched throttle. The truck lurched. I felt a jolt, heard metallic clangs like tin against axle, then acceleration as tires bit pavement. Quarter mile later, I stopped in a church parking pull-off, heart pogoing. The window was spiderwebbed. A fist-sized river rock sat on the seat beside my backpack. Worse, the fog light indicator blinked amber passenger pod dangling severed wires. Someone had been crouched just out of beam spread. Cell reception. 0 bars. I dug the tire iron from behind the seat, weighed options. 2 miles back to Rafe, 3 forward to the main road. I chose forward-less switchbacks. I cranked ignition. Every dash light died. Hood latch popped from inside. Fuse box looked intact. Then I spotted a battery ground cable sliced nearly through, strands curling like frayed hair. Whoever dropped the rock had hoped I'd stall right there. That's when the legend clicked fresh. Knock out a light, lure driver to investigate, leave them blind on ridge, strip vehicle at leisure. Maybe stories about a headless brakeman were just camouflage for thieves who'd been using lanterns for decades. I twisted ground wire together, enough to crank 1 more time. Engine turned over, I slammed hood, crawled forward. Lantern light flashed again in mirror, now farther up ridge, then winked out. A second lantern floated near my front bumper different angle, 2 of them coordinating. One light danced into the lane, forcing me to stop. The second swung from the forest edge. Through fog, I saw silhouettes of people and what looked like bright hunting coveralls. High wheeze orange, designed to read as afterimage against headlights. My pulse drummed like brake rotors. Driver's side silhouette raised something long and slim. For a second I pictured shotgun, but when it struck the asphalt it rang metal pipe. They started advancing, tapping pipe head on pavement every few steps, 4 beats at a time, echoing the fair knocks of the toll legend. My hands froze on wheel. Fight or flee. I chose drive. I swerved right, plowed through shoulder scrub, felt the Tacoma fishtail, but grip. Lantern bearer jumped aside, swinging pipe at my mirror glass exploded. I kept foot hammered until the lane straightened, then roared onto US 19. Only when I hit the lit gas station by the bridge did I exhale. Inside, I dumped adrenaline on the cashier, showed the rock, the cut cable, the footage because dashcam never left windshield. We called Fayette County deputies. They rolled up in 10. Body cam review matched my video. 2 figures in orange highways. Faces masked with bandanas patterned like old newsprint. Not spooky headless, just practical cloth to hide identity. Deputies searched ridge pull-offs. At Lantern Bend Tunnel, they hit jackpot. Stripped catalytic converters, battery cores, a plastic tub filled with fog lights, and a bolt cutter set still warm. Footprints match waffle work boots. A third lantern lay smashed beside rail ties. Trail cams installed by a hiking club had captured the same pair the week before mulling over a Prius, stranded with flat tires. VIN search tied the tube of converters to thefts from Charleston to Beckley. Arrest came 48 hours later at a scrapyard outside Oak Hill. 2 brothers, again, late 20s, driving a box truck with 50-plus pounds of cut copper and 14 catalytic converters. They'd rigged battery lanterns with LED candles inside mason jars to mimic kerosene glow. Fog and night did the rest. Their granddad had told them the Lantern Jack story. They weaponized it. Slice battery ground, disable one light, tip the driver to stall, pose as good Samaritans or scare them off, then harvest parts. They'd run the con 6 weekends until a wedding videographer's dome light spooked them. My run-in was night 7. Insurance-covered windows. Rafe welded a chain across the spur's access path. County now posts reflective detour signs steering tourists away after dusk. The legend mutated. Hikers claim Lantern Jack's light has doubled, warning travelers, as if the ghost itself multiplied. Reddit threads argue whether my footage shows a genuine flame or LED. I know what it shows, 2 men leaning on a myth because fear is lighter to carry than firearms and lore silencers. Questions quicker than a lock blade. I still haul supplies up the ridge, but only in daylight and never alone. I soldered a spare ground cable into the Tacoma, wired battery disconnect under the seat, and keep the dash cam recording even when parked. Sometimes fog still shrouds the switchback and LED reflections bounce just so, flickering like a lantern. My grip tightens, ready for 4 hollow taps on glass. Because Peter's legend taught me monsters need no heads, only highways vests, a rock, and knowledge that most drivers will stop when a light blocks the lane, owing a toll they never agreed to pay. I grew up hearing campfire rumors about the Gap Whistlers, those half-feral Appalachian drifters who lure hikers off trail with bird calls that sound just wrong enough to raise the hair on your arms. I never believed it until the spring I helped my older cousin Luke scout a section of the old Appalachian Trail spur near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. We planned 2 nights out, collecting GPS data for his grad school ecology project. Nothing paranormal, just counting salamanders and tracing abandoned logging roads. Luke is the kind of guy who carries bear spray for raccoons, so I felt safe. We'd park his rust-eaten Wrangler at a forestry gate outside Carter County just before dusk, shouldered 40-pound packs, and hiked a fading wagon grade called Whisper Gap Road, named for the way wind sighs through the hemlocks. My phone bars vanished by the second switchback. The nearest town, Roan Mountain, lay 10 miles a ridge away. So we logged coordinates on a handheld Garmin and followed trailblazes nailed when Eisenhower was president. By 9, we pitched a nylon dome beside a mossy foundation that used to be a civilian conservation corps cabin. Luke boiled ramen on his jet boil while I jotted notes about spring peeper calls. Somewhere downslope, an owl hooted 3 times, then once more beat late, like an echo of timing issues. Luke looked up, said locals call that mismatch the mountain stutter. Sounded harmless, so we turned in. Sometime after midnight, a whistle slid through Camp 2, rising notes, bird-like but thin, as if blown through cupped palms. It stopped, waited, repeated off rhythm. Luke muttered half awake that screech owls sometimes mimic each other. I rolled over, forced sleep. Morning brought coffee, damp boots, and fresh tracks where dew had been brushed off ferns around our clearing. Luke shrugged. Probably a deer nosing salt from backpacks. We spent the day bushwhacking ridge fingers, flagging invasive kudzu patches, and photographing seepage lines. Around 4, we stumbled on a makeshift still site. 5-gallon steel drums, blackened by fire. Plastic tubing coiled like entrails, and a tarp shredded by last winter's snows. Moonshiners or meth. Either way, we marked GPS and hurried uphill. The whistle returned at dusk, closer. Luke barked, "Who's there?" Silence. We killed our headlamps and listened. Twigs cracked down valley, then the whistle again, now further off as though mapping our perimeter. My pulse skittered, but Luke said if it was bootleggers, they'd avoid a campsite with 2 armed hikers. We planned a pre-dawn exit anyway. 1:30. The zipper rasped me awake. Luke slipped outside to relieve himself, told me to stay put. Seconds stretched until a branch snapped, the heavy kind you feel in your chest. Luke's voice cut through dark. "Not funny, man." Another snap, farther downslope. His headlamp beam swung, illuminating tree trunks and nothing else. Then the whistle low, slow, close. Luke whispered my name. I unzipped and crawled out. Cold mist hugged our shins. Luke pointed toward the gap. A single faint glow bobbed, flashlight or phone, then winked out. We doused the fire's last coals, stuffed essentials into day packs. Luke radioed a park ranger, frequency static only. We started the 2-mile push back to the Wrangler, headlamps off, using the dim trail reflectors Luke hammered last trip. The whistle kept pace, paralleling us through laurel thickets. Near the second switchback, a rope hung across the path at knee height, frayed ends lit by my lamp. Luke cursed, realizing someone had set a trip line. We spotted 3 more gut-line cord taut between saplings. Recent. Whoever strung them did so within the last 12 hours. Urban legend nerves evaporated. This was human. We cut the cords with Luke's Leatherman and pressed on. 1/2 mile from the gate, a low drone rolled up valley. A TV engine throttling down, lights off. Luke shoved me behind a boulder. The ATV crawled past 2 riders, both wearing hooded camo, one holding a shotgun across handlebars. They paused at our tire tracks, scanning forest with a thermal scope that glowed green against his face. The whistle this time from the driver floated upslope like a signal. Hearing an answering trill behind us, they gunned the engine deeper into woods. Luke hissed we'd circle wide to avoid an ambush. We bushwhacked through rhododendron hell, emerging 30 yards above the Wrangler. The Jeep looked wrong. Driver door ajar, glove box contents scattered like white confetti. Luke crept forward, revolver drawn. Inside, the ignition wires hung free, snipped. Tires slashed stem to rim. On the hood, written in pine pitch, 3 letters dripped. Najap. Headlights flashed uphill, very turning. We bolted downhill toward Doe River, figuring water-masked footprints. 1/2 mile of slippery rocks later, Luke collapsed behind a fallen birch, wheezing. We debated climbing to Highway 19E, but Luke's ankle twisted bad. I activated a PL beacon he'd insisted on carrying. Confirmation blinked green, yet rescue could take hours. The whistle sounded again, this time from both valley walls, call and response. My phone still dead. I remembered a rail trail bridge a mile downstream that sometimes carried cell phone ghost bars. Leaving Luke with bear spray and revolver, I half ran along riverbank until Trestle beams loomed. Midspan, 1 bar flickered. I dialed 911. The call stuttered but connected long enough to blurt coordinates. Dispatches said deputies were 50 minutes out. River foam glowed under thin moon when I heard footsteps on ballast. Camo Hood emerged at bridge edge. He carried a screwdriver, what looked like a walkie's. I flattened against girder shadow. Phone light off. He knelt mid-span, unscrewing bolts from railing busy sabotaging. His radio crackled. Lost them. Beacon ping headed south. They were tracking Luke's PLB signal. I back-crawled. Stones gouging knees. Sprinted for riverbank. Splashed waist-deep downstream until water-numb bit my legs. 10 minutes later, red-blue strobes flashed distant. Deputies 4x4 south ground, gears up Whisper Gap Road. Men scattered whistles darted like startled birds. A spotlight burned through brush. Commands boomed. One suspect bolted across trestle. Deputy K9 behind. Second man fled into Laurel, where he ran into a state wildlife officer summoned for backup. Sheriff report next day revealed their operation. Off-grid squatters stripping copper from abandoned CC phone lines, guarding a hidden still, and waylaying hikers to protect territory. They picked Whisper Gap because local ghost story. Podcasts kept casual campers away. Feral people, legend became their scarecrow. Zip ties, rope snares, and busted ignitions showed patterns spanning 3 years. Luke's ankle proved a mild sprain. Jeep required new tires and wiring. Deputies returned our packs, though Luke's memory card with salamander photos was gone smashed under muddy boot print, maybe to erase evidence. County installed trail cameras and posted closure notices while authorities cleaned illegal camps. Appalachian Trail forums blew up. Some argued Gap whistlers were real feral clans. Others cited our case as proof human predators hide behind folklore. Either way, I hike with satellite texting now, and Luke straps steel mesh over his tailpipe. Nights when wind whistles 2 rising notes, I still freeze because Whisper Gap taught me legends are useful tools for podcasters chasing clicks. And for people who like the woods empty enough to set knee-high snares in the dark,